back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your co-host, Neil Prasad. It's great for you to be here today. I'm joined with my colleague, Jason Rule. Jason, say hi to the nice people.
Hello, everyone.
For those of you who are joining us on YouTube, thank you very much for taking time out of your precious day to view us in the flesh, virtually speaking. Those of you who got us between your ears, we really appreciate you taking time out to join us here on your chosen platform. We really appreciate all the love and support we've been receiving as of late, and we're looking forward to continuing our journey as we continue down these topics of entrepreneurship. In our last episode, we were taking a closer look at the business of partnerships and whether or not we actually needed or whether it was worthwhile for us to have a partner. Today, we're going to be extending that conversation, but a little bit of a different dialect or a little bit of a different angle per se. And we're talking about things related to building out a team. We've all done it. We've all been in our 9 to 5 or we're a part of a team to some degree, or you have partners that are extension of your team. Jay, why don't you give the people a little bit of a sample as far as what we're going to get into today?
Yeah, no, appreciate that, Neil. To keep the conversation going as it relates to partnerships, do you need a partner? Extending this a little bit more, or extending that discussion a little bit more into teams. Why do you need a team? Can a team be beneficial to you? How important is a team as it relates to building your business? And not only to building your business, but constructing your life. That may be a far-arching comment, but what it really gets into is how can different experts and different people that bring value to your life really contribute to places that you want to go, things that you want to do, and goals that you have. And then how do we, who and what should we consider when we're putting these people and these teams together that can further help develop aspects of your life?
Yeah, spot on. I think, on the personal front, we do so organically, right?
Yes.
I mean, someone's either referred you to a financial planner or, everyone's got the best real estate guy in the world, right?
Everyone's got a guy, right? It's always
absolutely. I actually did a post about that a couple of years back, where with all my networking and sort of being out and about in different chambers and different boards and sort of galas and dinner meetings, etc. And literally my desk, thousands of cards, and that was 1 year of just networking. And
you took a picture of that. I remember that.
And I threw it out, and I was like, I know a guy. It's the power of network, right? So it's interesting that you say that, right? Because I'm sure if I gather up those cards, there's a stack like this, probably with real estate. There's a stack like that, probably with financial planners, right? And there's a stack like that, probably
mortgage brokers.
You nailed it, right? So it's like, and there's nothing for it. There's different personalities and different cadences for different individuals, right? And I think it's
the different people you jive with, and there's and that whole business of relationships and business of referrals has spun off a lot of different businesses, right? You have your different online platforms where you can go in and rate businesses, and you can get assistance and help. And HomeStars is one that is really built around the home improvement aspect, right? Like, and everybody knows a guy who can fix a toilet, or a guy who can do landscaping, but HomeStars and other applications and platforms help reduce some of that gray area that you get into with not knowing who to trust, not having a good reference or referral. I can almost say unequivocally that I run aspects of my life strictly on referrals. I don't almost do things without getting a recommendation or getting somebody to vouch for another person. Sometimes you want to be risky and you want to go outside those lines and find your own person or find your own contact, because maybe there's a fantastic person that you don't realize exists, and you discover him or her through either personal discovery, maybe even a Google search, right? Like, there's many different ways to get experts and people on your team, right? Don't think of team as something where they work for you. Sometimes they can work with you, but at the end of the day, you're hiring people to do activities and tasks, right? So team is very centric around that, but you really need to figure out what works best for you. Like, I don't know, Neil, like for me, the referral thing is big. I like hearing good feedback about people and about work done that really helps me feel comfortable with the people that I'm bringing on my team or that I'm hiring for work. I don't know, what's your usual way of finding people, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, like it really depends on the situation, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
we're talking business or we're talking personally. But on the personal front, I think it starts with Google.
Yeah.
A little bit of background research, especially if it's an area that I'm not necessarily fully knowledgeable about.
Yeah.
And I start to do my preliminary research, taking a closer look at what the content there, just to familiarize myself with the actual talking points, and then
Mhm.
have a better understanding, or at least a holistic approach or viewpoint.
Yeah.
And then from there, after I do speak to one or two maybe vetted professionals within those particular
Mhm.
areas, then I'll go to the friends list or groups, right? WhatsApp groups and whatnot. Plant a
Mhm.
seed there and see who's saying what when, see who somebody else knows, right? And figure out, okay, how does that person measure up against the person that I just spoke to or the website that I
Yeah.
just visited? And then, if there's somebody within my direct circle of influence that has actually utilized someone that has a positive experience, like you said, I think
Yeah.
that word of mouth marketing it's never going to go away. It's regardless, right? There's always going to be,
Yeah.
if somebody tells you that they've got a glowing relationship or review with personally working with someone, even
Mhm.
if you're looking at other areas or other experts, you're going to still have that person's voice in the back of your head talking
Always.
about that particular person or his,
Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
you're going to question, okay, should I have gone that route? Did I make the right decision? Right? Buyer's remorse, right? Like it's always out there. On the
Yeah.
professional front, sometimes we're forced into teams, right? Sometimes we have to work within the oil and water relationship and navigate that tactfully in a professional manner. We
Mhm.
can't always be forced or can't always be on a team that's sort of rowing in the right direction 100% of the time.
Yeah.
When you are, it's beautiful music, man. It's like it's a well orchestrated play, something that's
Yeah.
theatrical and it's beautiful to watch. But when you're not, it's like a volcano erupting, or
Well,
just about to erupt.
it's kind of like that example back in middle school or high school where there's always that kid that no one wanted to work with because he or she would do no work as part of the team and the group, right? Like as adults, we have those same people that just don't really seem to want to either be part of the group, pull their own weight, or they may not have a collaborative bone in their body, right? They're used to either being lone wolves or they're used to taking their time to complete tasks. Like you go into many different organizations, you find people like that. You find people that are well intended, very skilled at what they do, but they don't play well with others. They like to kind of run their own show and provide feedback internally to whatever project or initiative they're working on. As a manager, you definitely need to recognize where people's strengths lie, and then appropriately enable them to succeed versus everybody, here's your project, here's your initiative, we're going to go in this direction, this is the only direction we're going to follow. The vision sometimes gets lost, right? So having, as part of a team, having that vision is also very important to making sure the teams are successful. Like to your point, Neil, like with the oil and water type of scenario, you really have to understand where that oil and water exists within the team and who generally work well together. Because sometimes it becomes not just one team, but sub teams. Like you take Jane and Bill because they work really well together and they have a good synergy. You put them on a particular aspect of the overall project or team you want to work on. And then Tom and Randy, you put over here because they have a better rapport at doing some of the technical stuff. So there's really got to be, when you're building the team, especially in an internal company perspective, sometimes you need to play to the strengths of the individuals and sometimes subdivide the team to really have it come back around, right? It's kind of like water, right? The water is going to keep going. You can put stones and rocks in the stream, but the water is going to find its way around it back to the central point, right? So that's what I would say with a team that you have some oil and water aspect going on. Maybe it's better to create teams within the team to kind of be successful. Just
Yeah,
again, from what I've seen in the corporate world, sometimes that works.
yeah. It just becomes a logistical nightmare sometimes. It's more work that's required in order for the payout to actually
Yeah.
worth its while. You know what I
Keep the
mean? Like
people apart. Keep the
yeah,
fighting.
it's
Yeah, separate.
sometimes it's just it's nonsense, right? Because some people feel threatened or
Mhm.
their egos at risk, right? And
Mhm.
we can't deal with that collaboration, or maybe that's just the way they're cut. I don't
Yeah.
know. But it's interesting to see how that, like you mentioned, sort of translates into their core, their being.
Yeah, yeah, and I think going back to one of the original things that I think we wanted to cover about partnerships and teams and working with people. I think one of the things that I think from a business owner perspective, so if you're either an entrepreneur starting a business, you're collecting your team. There's some people that I think, and Neil, you can attest to this, that are essential to your development and building of a business, right? Like, when you start a business, you are really just in the business to solve a problem. We talked about this before. And as this problem starts to get solved, you need to start having the right people in place in order to increase your success and scale your business, right? These people will help scale your business. People like an accountant, very important, very critical to have as part of the team, because he or she is going to help you with the financial languages of building a business and retaining revenue, getting revenues and money if you need to from a loan perspective. So an accountant is really going to help you with that. A lawyer, people may overlook that. They may say, well, I don't need a lawyer. I'm not getting sued. I'm not going to be in trouble. I'm not going to. Well, depending on the business you're in, a lawyer is a huge part of your team. Whether he or she works for you or they're a consultant or a third party, it's somebody very much important that you need to have on your team. So lawyer, accountant, and then the other key people is operations and HR, but more operations, because operations helps you run the day-to-day. And that individual is going to be critical to making sure that all the aspects of the business that you're going to start bringing in underneath operations, like finance, like IT, like HR, if that's an area that you need to work on, are all aligned from an operationalization perspective. So the business can start executing what it's supposed to be doing, and that's running itself. So just again, about the partnerships and the teamwork and all that stuff, I wanted to throw that out to our audience to say, what, part of building that business foundation is to get these people or these individuals as part of your team, build them in. Whether you have the revenue to hire them, great. But if you don't, everyone can be worked for in a gig type of scenario. Pay for the time that you invest with them, pay for the time that you take up with them, and start to leverage them as part of what you do. So I just wanted to interject
I
with
just
that.
had a conversation earlier this week, or not earlier this week, it's Monday, but I had a conversation, it was Sunday night, Sunday morning, about someone looking to create a holding company, and then taking a closer look at having offshoot businesses running underneath that organization, and how the financials would be leveraged in order to have certain kickbacks or write-offs. And I said to them, I said, listen, I've been in business for a while. I haven't been in that particular scenario where you're identifying, and I don't want to get into sort of the minutia of it as far as confidentiality, but when we were chatting, I said to him, I said, you're better off. I've got a great accountant that I can introduce you to, and I think it's wise that you have a conversation with them as opposed to hearing piecemeal about my 2 cents into that specific scenario, because my 2 cents might end up costing you $2 million, right? And I don't want to be liable for that particular advice. So I suggested right off the bat, right? I said, you should really talk to a professional. And I think that's it's this ebb and flow and bottleneck scenario with entrepreneurs, right? You got to do it all. You're used to doing it all. There's so many hats that you're wearing. I can do it all. I don't need anybody, right?
Sometimes you think that way,
right? And then you realize that something's taking you longer to accomplish because of the amount of background, research, information, navigating that while still trying to manage everything else that's happening over here in the ecos. But had you gone and hired someone or had that consultation, because most of the time the 30-minute consultation is it's complimentary for the most part for any professional services.
To get started, to really understand where the individual that you're seeking help from can add value and help you with what you need. Right? It's table stakes at this stage.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you're going to go out and seek 30-minute consults with different individuals under the same industry or same aspect of business, right?
Yeah.
Based on your needs, but when you find someone that's worth their weight, or that somebody's referred you to, then don't abuse that.
Yeah.
intro. Don't abuse that relationship or that referral, because
Mhm.
you could end up doing yourself more of an injustice than what the desired task is to accomplish.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
right.
And I can speak to this from personal experience. Not only is it valuable to understand the right professional that you need for the job that you need him or her to do, it's also very important to educate yourself. To be informed about the impacts of the decisions that the professionals are recommending to you. Don't get all high and mighty and say, well, I know better, so I'm not going to do what professional ABC said, because I read in a book online that it said I should do it this way. Well, yeah, you can have an opinion, but again, the opinion can be very much based on facts that are not necessarily applicable, or your opinion can be very much convoluted by your cousin Jerry, who's had some success in the business and who's done things a certain way. You really need to understand the circumstances in which you're committing to and the things that you're putting forth to your professional and asking those questions, right? Like again, from personal experience, sometimes asking 3 or 4 questions or 5 or 6 questions may seem like it's a lot when you're talking to a professional about your business. But at the end of the day, 5 or 6, if you don't ask the questions, it almost makes them think that you're not really interested in the answers, right? So being um, being prideful and being quiet and not speaking up for what you need to know about and what's important is almost as bad as not seeking advice at all. So I implore people to do more of that. I can tell from personal experience that sometimes asking the right questions and being very diligent on getting the right answer that you understand can save you thousands of dollars in terms of either um, mis mis misallocated tax strategies and inappropriate tax payment timelines that you have to abide by. So there's ways to get through it all. It's just sometimes it's better to ask the right questions, be direct and specific on what you need to know, and holding people accountable if the information's not right, or if yourself is being held accountable for not following the information that was given to you that was in your best interest.
Mhm.
So a little bit of soapbox there, a little bit of personal affirmation, but definitely that's what Hustlemode's for, right? To share.
So what do you say? Like, what's the what about yourself? How do you go about vetting these particular professionals that are coming into the fold?
Yeah, no,
Is there a
good,
checklist that you have? Is there
no, good question. So I have a little bit of a hybrid approach. So I do a little bit of independent research, and I take a look at what that individual has done in the marketplace, whether it be on their website or whether it be on their socials or whatever the case may be. I do spend a lot of time talking to people about the quality and the reliability of people prior. As I said before, in my personal life, I also translate that over into business, where I like to work with people I like to work with people that work with people that I trust and have respect for, right? So, for example, if I ask, hey, who's your real estate agent? And they give me a list of like 10 people or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, you've given me 3 people or 10 people. Who have you worked with? Who have you bought a house with? Who have you transacted business with? Okay, well, I want to talk to them, or I want to have a conversation with them. And then I really just spend the time having the conversation with the person and get a feel. Because at the end of the day, we're all salespeople. Everyone's a salesperson. So you can be sold and persuaded by a story, by reference, by whatever. So you really have to cut through that and understand what's best for you as a business. Like every accountant effectively does the same thing. Like everyone, they do your balance sheet, they do your taxes, they do your financial statements, they do some of your overall tax planning. But some of them do it better than others. Some of them have a personalized touch. Some have more experience. So there's always a degree of um, a personal preference that you come across with a financial person. Same with a financial planner, right? Your financial planner hopefully isn't your cousin. or your your mother's best friend. It's somebody who maybe is around the same age as you. I don't want to be ageism here, but maybe around the same age as you. So they're not going to be leaving the business and selling your book of business to somebody else in 5 years. I always recommend that. So all the young people out there, if you hook up with a financial planner, it's good. A financial planner and an insurance person, man, like I got an education on life insurance, not from somebody passing, but from some people now that are building their legacy to their children around life insurance policies. Quick example: you are, a 50-year-old or 45-year-old person who has, maybe you have a house, maybe you have a few cars, but really not much else. Like you don't have, a huge inheritance from your parents. You don't have a cottage, or you don't have a lot of this generational wealth. You're just, you're working on yourself and getting yourself going. So what they do, or what I've seen them do, is they load up on life insurance, like a proper amount of life insurance, not the term life insurance, but I can't remember what they call it, the whole life. Thank you, Neil. So they load up on that, and basically that is the insurance to know that if anything happens to them, their children are good until they pass on. And when they pass on, who cares? It's up to the kids. You know what I mean? But as long as the family is taken care of in that person's passing, because again, they don't have that, I'm going to leave you $5 million when I die, because they started with their parents who are either immigrants here, had no money or whatever. So your legacy building. So they've built a whole portfolio around life insurance. So again, we're not here to talk investment. I'm not an investment advisor by any means, and anything I say is just my opinion. So don't base your financial life on that. We'll get a guy or a gal in here who can talk about that. But back to what I was saying, there are different ways to evaluate people, different ways to have strategies. In business and in personal, I do really look at the referral aspect before I work with somebody, and I get the trust of the trusting the person that I trust's opinion as part of what I do. And of course, due diligence, like check the person out, like research them online, check if they have any Google reviews, check if they have any, bad experience with clients. And then the buddy or person that you're asking, ask them like, hey, like, what's it like to work with so-and-so? It's like, oh yeah, they're responsive. Okay. And to me, because of the way I work and the lifestyle that I lead, responsiveness is key, man. Like I can't stress it enough. If the person is the best real estate agent, financial planner, mortgage broker, whatever, but they don't respond, at least acknowledge a response, dead to me, man. Like that's the killer aspect of somebody's existence in my world, responsiveness. Because I like to think I'm a responsive guy, maybe not all the time when it comes to business, but in sales, I'm on the ball, man. Like you send me an email, you get a reply, right? Unless I don't want to talk to you, but that's a different story. But you send me an email, you get a reply. So for me, if you're looking at, and actually, I want your opinion on this, Neil. When you're ranking how I evaluate somebody's existence as part of my team, responsiveness and reliability, top, man, top. Yeah. How about you? Like, what are your, like, what's the number one gate? So let's say the guy's highly qualified, really intelligent, knows his stuff, but he's a train wreck when it comes to getting back to you. It takes you 3 days to return your calls. He, drops the ball on appointments, doesn't reach when he doesn't come to your house when he says he's going to come, shows up late, shows up drunk, whatever, but he's the best in the business. Everyone says so. What do you think?
It really depends, man. Like that's a tough one. You know what I mean? Because I value people's time, right? Like I hate it when I'm late by whatever scenario. Could it be traffic? Could it be unexpected construction? An accident on the road, whatever the case may be.
Leave 10 minutes earlier,
Yeah, like if you're, yeah. But anyways, that's another topic. But it's interesting. Like I think as I've gotten older, I've been a little bit more forgiving on certain things, right? Like I'll give you a 3-strike, you're out kind of thing, to some degree, unless it depends on the type of mood that I'm into. So that has a lot to do with it. But no, I mean, you and I cut from the same cloth, right? Like you send a message, you expect a reply, right? It's sort of the unwritten code between certain people. Yeah. And then if not, like some people, fail to realize that, there's life that happens too, right? Like, and maybe I'm with the kids right now, and I'm not at liberty. Or, sure, the phone's on me, but I'm not answering, right? Like, I'm with my
Yeah.
friend. So
Well,
there's
in a
like,
hyper connected world, you're right. Like you do need a little bit of gray and a little bit of flex. Like I'm not a tyrant to say if I send you a message at 3 a.m, you need to get back to me in 20 minutes. Like that's not realistic. But I'm saying if you have a
20 minutes is not
professional,
realistic, or the 3 a.m. is not realistic.
the 3 a.m is not realistic. But I'm saying if you have a professional engagement and you don't show up, you don't call, you don't provide like in sales. So I
Well,
don't know.
yeah, 100%. So
Yeah.
if I'm in a professional relationship or engagement, I thought, like, if we're talking about personally, I'll be a little bit more forgiving, right? But like,
Yeah. Same.
you and I both know, as a salesperson, or sales
Mm.
professional, there's no such thing as a no-show or no call or a poor ass excuse, right? Like,
Yeah.
you show up when you say you're going to show up, you do what you say you're going to do, and you deliver. And then when you close, you follow up to make sure that there's a state in the calendar for that presentation or the
Yeah.
next step to be committed on before you actually get a commitment, or
Mm.
you shake hands and you walk away because the communication is cease and desist, right?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like, so that goes without question. Like, you know, you've lost. Like, there's no second call back. There's nothing. I'm calling somebody else. I'm calling the guy that referred me, actually, and telling him, thanks very much, but just FYI, the buddy that you came and talked so highly about,
Yeah.
not so much. You might want to check that, right?
I like
So
that though. But no, that's a good way of keeping people accountable for the recommendations. And again, somebody who works for you, works well with you, might not work well for me, and vice versa, right? So there is that degree of leeway you give people, but you can't not give them feedback. Like I've come into that a couple times where people have followed up with me and said, "Hey, Jason, that guy that you gave me, that mechanic guy who was supposed to do my tires." Terrible. Like they were rude. They didn't get back to me. They, screwed up something. I'm like, okay, I appreciate your feedback. And it depends on my relationship with the people on the other end, because I may or may not say anything to them to say, hey, you know what? No, my buddy that I sent to you, they're pissed. They said you guys did a shit job and they're not happy with the work you did. Like, how do we make it right? And, it depends on the relationship I think you have with that provider, service provider, individual, plumber, electrician, whatever, to be bold enough to go up to them after the fact, after the bad referral comes back, and say, "You dropped the ball, man. Like, what are you gonna do about it?"
yeah, I mean, hey, listen, if
Mm.
you're working with them and you don't have the gall to go back to them after they messed up, then what does that say about you, right? Like, I
Yeah,
mean, I
I
wouldn't
agree.
refer somebody that I've already got that vouch for, right?
Mm.
Because you're putting my name into the gutter. I don't want to be associated with that, right? And maybe you're just having a bad day or an off day. And
Yeah,
we're human, right? That happens. But at the same point in time, if you're not coming full circle after you said, people have the opportunity to choose whatever partner, vendor, or relationship they want to seek out. It's a dime a dozen. Just hit Google and figure out exactly where you want to go next, right?
yeah,
So the mere
yeah,
fact that somebody's going out of their way to make a recommendation or referral, and that you're not going to treat that as a warm, open opportunity to solidify a relationship, that's on you, man.
yeah. Yeah, you really got to evaluate what you find as important and what you value as it relates to that referral. If you
Yeah.
don't take it as something that is of value, move on, right?
Well, let me ask
Yeah.
you this. I mean, I've been in several situations in my career where, I was either the first or second or maybe the fifth hire in an organization, right? And I
Mhm.
haven't been on the other side as of yet, as far as identifying. Well, I have and I haven't, to be honest. Like, I haven't hold the reins to be able to say, okay, you know what? Like, we're doing well. We need to make sure that we have enough warm bodies in certain seats in order to sufficiently or effectively um, facilitate this growth or this surge of business that we're able to
Yeah.
receive, right? What does it take? Like, what's the tipping point? You mentioned, okay, operations, you mentioned, accounting or finance, you mentioned HR, and usually HR is probably the last one in the solopreneur or entrepreneurship
Yeah,
realm
I agree.
to be incorporated into the business because,
Mhm.
let's just face it, if you're under a certain team count, you can get away with certain things, still servicing your employees to the best of your ability, but
Yeah.
there's certain things that you can just continue to operate with without having to incorporate that into the mix as far as an investment is concerned. HR professionals out there, don't kill me for this, but I'm just going by experience, right? So um, the other thing is that, so the real down and dirty question is that, at what point in time do you say to yourself, okay, you know what, I'm ready to scale. You've got your OPSP, your one-page strategic plan. You identify all your checks and balances. You figure out 2021, this is your goal list or your challenges or your objectives or your BHAG, right? Your big, hairy, audacious goal.
Mhm.
So at what point in time do you say, okay, time to level up? How do I add, or when do I add the all-star talent to the roster in order to facilitate this growth or hit these targets or manage these
Yeah.
new markets?
Like these are all painful questions because this is where we're at with my business with iLead. We're at that stage where we're very lean. We can say that we have a flex workforce of 3 people. Um, and we're at that point now where we need to scale and bring on individuals and start to add additional capabilities to the team for that scaling initiative, right? So how do we do it? And the thing that we've struggled with is giving up pieces of tasks that are attached to running and operating the business. The whole thing that I've been personally struggling with, or we're struggling with as a business, it's kind of coffee share time here, is the instead of working for the business, trying to work on the business. And that's a big one, man. Like that to me is the biggest hurdle that I think we're going to face in 2021, 2022 is to stop working for the business and start working on it. You can hire people to work for the business. That's what employees are for. That's what, let's say, fractional workers are for. I want to be in a position where we can run very lean, but then we can expand to take on different aspects and tasks and start to piece off those things from the founders or from the leadership team and say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to do the invoicing anymore. This person's going to do it. I'm not going to do the provisioning and setup anymore. This person's going to do it. I'm not going to do the errand running to get hardware around the GTA. This person's going to do it. That's a personal one. So there's a lot of task allocation that you really need to look into and be comfortable with and start to document things a little bit more openly and have those pieces. So, great, great segue, Dio, because it's definitely something that talking about it hopefully will help us get over the lump or the hump on it and help us really start to transition. Because if I was to take a crystal ball and say, here's how we would do it, based on your question, what I would really look at, obviously, is the processes that we're trying to outsource, and then find the right people, the nature of this podcast episode, to start to execute these pieces, and then do the research and the discovery to find those people and see whether we can start to use it. The hardest thing, I think, in this challenge for me, from personal experience, is looking at trying to incorporate people from a sales perspective without any accountability to the organization. So,
What do you mean by that?
Hiring salespeople that are not, or that are commission only, because we have a high technical aspect to what we do. Not technical in the sense where you need to know very complex calculations or anything like that, but it's a very specific type of sale and a very specific product segment that you're selling for customers that's not really on the top of their priority list. It's a sub product of the main product, which is a mobile phone. It's a sub product of that we sell that helps you connect your devices and stuff to the internet. So you really need to live that aspect, be involved in it, be more ingrained than hiring somebody that I know or somebody that my partner knows or somebody who knows somebody that we bring on who's just, it's a gig for them. They want to make a little bit of extra commission dollars. So for me, I think from a sales perspective, it's an all in.
Don't you feel that you're setting yourself up
What do you
by
mean?
operating on a 100% commission structure?
Do you think I'm setting myself up or I'm not setting up the individual? What do you mean?
Yeah, they're not setting the person up for success. Both ways. Okay, so like put yourself in that situation for a moment.
Mhm.
You've been in sales for XYZ amount of time,
Yep.
right? And somebody comes to you, waves this magic carrot in front of you and says, the bounty could be yours, if only, right? And the if only is all of the blood, sweat, and tears in order for you to execute so that you can actually retrieve that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
But I can't afford to pay you, right? Like you gotta earn your keep.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
It's yeah, and I see where you're coming from. Like if the shoe was on the other foot, I think that's the term, or the glove was on the other hand. I don't know, whatever that analogy is. Then yeah, I would probably be less likely to feel comfortable with a scenario like that, depending on my personal situation. So if my personal situation was just got laid off, didn't really have any prospects on the go, didn't really know what my next level in my career was, maybe I'd take a flyer out on something like that. And maybe, again, you have to find the right individual who is comfortable with that type of lifestyle shift, right?
So
And
like with sorry to cut you, but let's looking at it on the other side of the coin, right? So as a salesperson,
Mhm.
or sales professional, when you're looking at it, especially given the economy and what's happening right now as far as the uncertainty, when you don't have a salary to keep you afloat,
Yeah.
there's no vested interest for me to be trailblazing on that front because it's going to take anywhere between, let's say realistically, 3 to 6 months, depending on the environment that you're in order for you to
Yeah.
actually see a significant payout, right?
Yeah.
So
Fair
yeah,
to say.
sure. Does it depend on your situation financially? Absolutely. I'm not
Mhm.
questioning the ability. What I'm saying is that there's an opportunity that maybe you want to look at in a different lens or perspective to say, if I needed an invested employee, right?
Mhm.
Someone that has an invested interest in the growth of the organization, obviously finding the right people is going to be number one. It's always going to be the challenge, right? Regardless of any organization.
Yeah. In
Look
any
at
role.
look at Shopify. Shopify just lost 3 of their C-suite, right? Just recently, and that's a $1 billion organization plus, right? So like you're always going to have that people, human, H to H factor as far
Mhm.
as finding the right fit, looking at the mission or the vision or the philosophy of the organization to see whether or not it's a fit per se long term, right? But for the interim, whether you call it a 2 to 5 year stint, um,
Mhm.
how do you find someone that's going to be committed, that's not going to be able to be an expense, but more or less an investment? I think if you look at it in the sense or through the lens of an investment, you might have
Mhm.
a different perspective towards the long term, right? Because sure, can you get like 5 to 7 people that are in a pinch looking to try to find a job right now that wants to take 100% commission? Absolutely you can. Are you going to get the payout? Furthermore, talking about that trust and building and a rapport and establishing legacy, are you going to
Yeah.
get committed individuals that are going to be willing to represent your brand in the right fashion that you want to have those conversations with, knowing that one of those potential clients could be a client or customer down the road, but because of that friction exchange of, hey, I'm just dialing for dollars here. Oh, you're not ready to buy? Okay, click. Right? Like there's no rapport development, there's no relationship building,
Yeah.
there's no setting the breadth of services that your organization can cater to them to pay dividends later on. Right? You're not getting that same level of professionalism per se. You're getting a person that's dialing for dollars.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about the type of person that you get based on the way in which you're paying them. Like I can say this from personal example. When I work for a large organization that wasn't really sales focused, they were more market focused. So their commission structure, you go with the whole, you're a sales rep, so you're 55-45, or you're 60-40 from base salary and commission, or commission and base salary, whatever that ratio is. But there was a ratio, right? If it's just your ratio is 100% commission and 0% anything else, like no expenses, no draw, whatever, I can see the type of people you may attract. So I think that's an interesting point around how you pay people sometimes could be the type of people you're trying to attract. And if your business, to your point, is more about building the relationship, building rapport, understanding what customers are doing, and filling in gaps they have with their connectivity solutions, maybe you need relationship people. Maybe you need not an account, not a sales rep, but an account manager, somebody who manages, here's a group of customers, grow the book or grow the business. So I never really looked at it from that perspective. I think that's a little bit of an epiphany in my eyes to say, okay, here's an account relationship manager. Manage these relationships, make sure these customers know who you are, they know what you do, they know what we do, they know what other products we're looking to push, and maintain it that way. So channel business development. So yeah, that's a different lens that I can maybe take a look at. I think that might help.
Yeah.
So yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah, because like when you look at it holistically, it makes a difference, right? Like you want to try to clone yourself to some degree,
Yeah.
right? And then by doing so, you're going to be able to offshoot what you think that person will be able to handle as time moves on, so that more of the responsibilities will be held with this one person or these team of people, or you're essentially trying to groom yourself for a replacement, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you do that method, then at least this way, long-term wise that, okay, now that you've taken this person under your wing, train them, coach them, let them run with it as far as maybe entering a new market or a new product or service, what have you, then at least this way you can see how that person will be able to achieve that particular success because they're doing it from the ground up, similar to how you would be doing it. And
Yeah.
then alleviate yourself from the whole scenario where you're saying, if the idea is to work on the business, not for the business, then this way you're setting yourself up because these people or that person can handle it without you being in the room. And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs get caught up, right? That's where a lot of things are delayed with the bottleneck scenario because they get stuck with, well, this is my baby, this is my business. I've been the one that needed to do this, when their failure to let go of ownership where certain areas is causing them to have that anchor in order for them to actually take flight. And that's where the discrepancies reside, right? They don't know when to let go. It's like you've birthed the baby. This child is now blossoming.
Yeah.
And it's now fostering, ready to go. They're ready to go into post-secondary, but you're still holding them back. And by you holding them back, you're actually doing them more injustice as opposed to encouraging them to grow.
So I know this may even be a podcast in itself, but one question I'll ask, and so we don't go really long and deep on this one, is in the organizations you've been part of, right? You've had the opportunity to work directly with the owner and the founder and the CEO of those businesses. What did you find they did to get over growth humps like this, or blind spots or barriers maybe to growth that they've had? Is it turning over the reins? Is it hiring one person that just has no apprehension about these things? Like, what have you seen in the roles that you've had working with founders and business owners? Oh, you paused there.
You know the answer to this one, Jay.
Hire Neil Prasad.
You already know the answer, bro.
Neil Prasad, that's the answer.
Oh man, listen, I wear my heart on my sleeve, bro. You know that, man. Like I'm gonna tell it to you how it is, right? So that could be maybe that's my pitfall. I don't know, but like I find that if you shoot from the hip and you're straight, the universe will reward you, because failure to do anything less is just you're putting the business at risk, and you're doing yourself an injustice professionally. And if they don't want to hear it, they don't want to hear it. But at the same point in time, it's got to be something that's within you in order for you to adjust. And every scenario is going to be different, right? Like, I mean, I know the last agency I was at, I told the CEO, I said, listen, like, you're going to have to hire an assistant, right? And we're going to have to hire more bodies, because the amount of work that's about to come in, I'm going to tell you right now that we're just going to be on rapid growth mode. And we were consecutively year over year until I left, right? And it was only 2 people selling. So, I'm not saying that I'm the greatest gift as a salesperson. I'm saying that as an entrepreneur, for those of you who are looking as far as the next level, in order to, if you read any book, oh geez, it's not even. I'm coming to a blank right now, but there's a book called Scaling Up that I read a couple of years back, and after I read that book, the premise of the book is actually looking at putting pebbles into buckets. And when you put pebbles into buckets, then you can fill it with sand. And then you have boulders, right? And those pebbles, buckets, pebbles and boulders and sand, the analogy is actually formulating the business, right? So
Yeah.
you put people or departments in different buckets, and those pebbles and sand and boulders, the pebbles being the problems, the boulders being, challenges or situations, but the sand is the execution and the minutia for the day-to-day that fills in all the cracks and crevices, right?
Yeah.
But in order for that to happen, you have to have the right people on the team. You have to have allocated responsibilities and accountability for different team members in order for you to meet on a weekly basis to take a closer look at the end goal. And that end goal could be XYZ widgets, could be XYZ market share, could be whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
But once you have that group of invested employees,
Invested
more
employees.
invested employees, yeah, like try to find that invested employees, right? An
Mm.
invested employee is somebody that treats the business as though it was their own. It's somebody that is committed to the vision and doing whatever it takes in order for them to be an extension of who you are as the organization as a whole, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
necessarily a gig. It's not a company, right? It goes beyond that. It's sort of the blurred lines between the friend and the employee kind of working relationship, right? I think that's the harmony that an entrepreneur needs to find, because at the end of the day, these people are buying into your vision for taking a chance on something that they don't even know is going to be around. Like, who are you? Like, you had an idea, you have somewhat of a company, and you've got maybe 3 or 4 people. I'm banking my career working here to see if I'm going to be able to feed my family, right? It's
Yeah.
a risk,
You're
right?
investing in that idea and that vision.
It's an invested employee. That's what I'm trying to say, right? So Scaling Up is a book that I read. It's from Vern Harsh from the Gazelle Institute. It's part of the Rockefeller Files. And after I read that book, first time I read it, I did about 700,000 contracted revenue in less than 9 months. And that's because it was like a well-oiled machine, right? You had people knowing what their job was, identifying what the goals were for the org, and everybody had the clear vision and path as far as what they needed to do
Yeah.
in order
That's
to
key.
execute based on their responsibilities.
Yeah, that's a key piece. Like you
Uh,
definitely, everyone needs to know what their role is and how they can execute it. And the manager has to make sure that people are successful in those roles and they're executing them properly. So
yeah.
there's a lot of synergy there.
Yeah, and I'm not even talking like a large org. Like there were 8 people when we implemented this Scaling Up mission, and it just quickly flew. So yeah, it's interesting, man. Like you're asking me. I think it has a lot to do with the environment and the goals and what stage in the game that you're at, right? Like if you've got a successful business, and hey, listen, I was just talking to a consultant earlier today, and somewhat of a business coach, so to speak, in helping organizations, a part-time CFO, worked for large global organizations as a CFO. And he told me right now, he's having a hard time talking to businesses to help them scale. And I said, well, he's the one that brought it to my attention. He's like, sometimes people just don't want to scale. They're comfortable with where they're at, and they
I
recognize
agree.
that being an entrepreneur is more about work-life balance or lifestyle than it is about chasing the paper.
Hyper growth. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. It's that whole, that Gary V talk where, if you can be ultra happy making 40 grand a year and working for yourself and taking all these vacations, then that's better than making 40 million a year and being miserable and hating your life.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's definitely, as an entrepreneur, a balance that you need to come to know where your happiness lies. Like where does your happiness exist? Does it exist in, making tons of money, but not having the ability to spend it and do anything with it? Or is it making just enough money to maintain a high lifestyle of, the things that matter most to you, like family and vacations and, nice clothes and houses and stuff like that? If that makes you happy and it's not something that you have to sacrifice so much of your happiness and time for, then you've made it, right? Like when you say, "Oh, I've made it," it's a different definition to everybody, man.
100%. Yeah.
Anyways,
Well, I think it's very easy for Gary to come off on that note, right?
yeah,
Considering
yeah, it's a lot of success, but again, if he didn't love what he does, he probably would do it differently. And he really has a passion for all the things that he's involved in. But again, that's another episode. Maybe we'll tag him in this, and he may watch this. Who knows?
Okay.
Anyways, so I think we had a good conversation, man. A lot of things that we covered off here. What do you have to tell the good people, Neil, that have stuck around to the end and want to continue to learn more about Hustlemode and what we're doing, where we're doing it, etc.?
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully they found value here. I'd really like to give them sort of a reference of some sort with regards to identifying maybe if we address the elephant in the room, which would be taking the next step and figuring out exactly when's the right moment to hire. What are the pillars that you should consider as an entrepreneur? What are the pros and cons? And maybe that should be good homework for you, Jay.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, it might be self-serving to some degree as you move down the pipe later on. But looking at what things that you should consider, how to identify what experts you need to bring in. Do you look at a disc analysis? How do you identify the right type of personalities that gel within your organization, things of that nature. So
Yeah.
I'll have some links in the description below for those of you who are watching on YouTube. I think for the most part, this episode really touched home for both of us on different levels.
Yeah, for sure.
If you found that it resonated with you, we'd always like for you to like, comment, share, and subscribe. That really does wonders for us and also for the algorithm here on YouTube. For those of you who've got us into your pod, if you found value here, tell a friend. Let us know. Jay and I are both open books. Feel free to connect with us at _podcast on Instagram, or we both have our personal channels. We're more than happy to allocate some time for you. If you got some topics that you'd like to discuss, let us know. We'd also like to get some feedback from you to see where you would be able to drive or find some inspiration, or perhaps you're struggling with something that you need to get off your chest in a public forum, so to speak. So send us a note. Let us know how we can help. We're always happy to do so. Until next time, folks, Hustlemode signing off.
Hustlemode out. Thank you.